North Lawndale was already under pressure. Poverty, violence, and limited opportunity shaping everyday life. But as gangs started forming, one group took things further than anyone expected. They didn't just recruit, they enforced loyalty. Refusing to join could mean repeated beatings, forced confrontations, and in some cases, disappearances that sent a clear message. Fear became a recruitment tool, and dominance became the goal. What started as a small group of teenagers quickly transformed into a growing force where membership wasn't always a choice and leaving wasn't always possible. You see, in the mid-1950s, North Lawndale wasn't just struggling. It felt like the neighborhood was slowly being drained. A small group of slumlords had quietly taken control of most of the rental properties, turning homes into profit machines while putting almost nothing back into the community. As the years passed, things started to unravel. Businesses began closing, buildings fell into disrepair, and the streets grew more dangerous. And the trouble wasn't only coming from within. Outsiders started moving through the area, bringing violence with them, and in some cases, targeting Black residents with hate-driven attacks. The atmosphere shifted, and North Lawndale became tense, uncertain, and increasingly unpredictable. Inside those homes, life was rough. Families packed into cold apartments, huddling around one old stove just to make it through the winter. Kids had nowhere to go, no parks, no centers, nothing positive to pour their energy into. So naturally, the streets became the hangout. And when boredom mixes with frustration like that, it doesn't take long before things turn physical. What started as loose groups of kids slowly turned into something more organized. Clubs became gangs. Names like the Clovers and the Imperial Chaplains started ringing out. Then came another wave, more aggressive, more structured. The Egyptian Cobras slid in from another area, bringing a different kind of energy with them. By the late 50s, growing up as a teenager in North Lawndale meant you were already part of something. Whether you wanted to be or not, the gang on your block wasn't just a group of kids hanging around. It was your environment, your protection, and sometimes your only sense of belonging. Even walking a few streets over could be dangerous. Crossing into another neighborhood wasn't just frowned upon. It could leave you injured or worse. Then, 1957 rolled around, and things took a darker turn. The violence didn't just grow, it evolved. What used to be fistfights started involving weapons. Knives showed up, then guns followed. And as tensions rose, so did fear. Police responded with heavy crackdowns, but instead of calming things down, it often made the situation worse. Officers flooded the area, rounding up young Black boys, beating them and locking them up. Arrests piled up, and before long, more and more teenagers were being pushed deeper into a system that felt impossible to escape. That's how a young dude named Edwin Perry, known as Pepolo, ended up getting caught up. He was only 15, already deep into street life, running burglaries just to survive. Before that, he had even tried to join the Imperial Chaplains, but got rejected straight to his face. They didn't see his value. That rejection turned out to be a turning point. After getting locked up and sent to a youth reformatory, Pepolo linked up with his old friend Leonard Calloway. Inside that place, Pep already had presence. He was strong, disciplined, and knew how to lead. So instead of just doing time, he started building something. He pulled together a small group, just 7 guys at first. Most of them didn't even know each other like that, but Pep had vision. He wasn't thinking small. He organized them, gave them structure, and started making moves inside the facility. They controlled food, clothes, and job assignments. Quietly, without the staff even realizing it, they were running things from behind the scenes. At first, they didn't even have a name, but Pep knew that had to change. During their meetings, they started throwing ideas around. Some wanted something simple, like a social club, but Pep was thinking bigger. He wanted something that would last once they got back to the streets. Eventually, he landed on a name that stuck: Vice Lords. To him, it meant control, grip, power. So, the first one to step out was Morris Miller, landing back on the streets with a clear mission. The plan was simple, but bold. Get the name buzzing early and start laying the foundation before the rest of the crew made it home. In return, he kept that conservative title, which carried real weight at the time. Morris did what he could, putting the name out there and trying to build momentum. But if we're being honest, things didn't truly take off yet. The movement was still in its early stages, waiting for something bigger. And that turning point finally came when the rest of the crew walked free in late 1958. When they finally reunited, the streets they came back to weren't the same. Everything had shifted. The old balance of power was gone. The Clovers, who used to be a serious force, had been weakened after getting hit hard by police crackdowns. That opened the door for new players, especially the Egyptian Cobras, who were stepping in heavy, trying to take over everything east of K-Town. The Chaplains were still around too, still holding weight, but the streets had gotten crowded and the numbers were crazy. Thousands of young dudes were already locked into different gangs. So here comes this small group of Vice Lords, just 7 deep at first, walking into a battlefield where everybody already had territory and numbers. They knew straight up they were outnumbered, but backing down wasn't in their DNA. Once Pep got back, he pulled in familiar faces from the block: Sun, Trip, Green, and Sloop. That brought them up to 11 members. Instead of rushing to recruit, they kept things tight for a minute, building their identity before letting outsiders in. And they moved smart. Instead of just jumping straight into war, they played the social game, throwing parties, hosting dances, staying surrounded by women, making sure their names stayed in conversations. They wanted attention, and they got it. But attention on those streets always comes with consequences. One night at a party, things went left. They ran into some Clovers, and it turned into a fight. The Vice Lords handled that situation, sent the Clovers running. For a moment, it looked like a statement win, but the Clovers weren't done. They came back deep, 50, maybe 60 guys, and caught the Vice Lords slipping. That ambush was brutal. Even though the Vice Lords fought their way out, it was clear they couldn't survive playing the numbers game like that. That moment changed everything. It wasn't just about surviving anymore, it was about growing fast or getting wiped out. And just like that, the Clovers became their first real enemies. From there, the Vice Lords started thinking strategically. They knew they weren't ready to take on the biggest crews head on, so they started targeting mid-sized gangs they could absorb. First up was the Barons, about 24 members strong. It kicked off with the fight at Farragut High, what they used to call a humbug. For a whole week, it was non-stop conflict. Even though the Vice Lords were outnumbered, they overwhelmed the Barons until they gave up and flipped. That one move boosted their numbers immediately. Then came the Van Dykes. That situation didn't even last long. In just a couple days, it ended in a twist nobody expected. The leader of the Van Dykes found out his own brother was already holding a high rank with the Vice Lords. At that point, fighting didn't make sense anymore. Blood ties took over, and the Van Dykes joined up too. By the time 1959 rolled in, the Vice Lords weren't just another crew, they were building a serious presence. And in 1959, they flipped the switch completely. They stopped playing small and went at everybody. That was the year they really stamped their name. Their biggest target was the Egyptian Cobras, who controlled all the prime spots, pools, parks, theaters, and had the social scene locked down. The Vice Lords wanted all of that, and they fought nonstop to take it. At the same time, Pepperlo's reputation was growing crazy. As smaller gangs kept falling and flipping, the Vice Lords' numbers shot up into the hundreds. They were fighting multiple enemies at once: the Cobras, the Comanches, the Chaplains, even groups like the Continental Pimps. And what made them different was how they moved. They didn't believe in alliances, no peace deals, no partnerships. Their rule was simple: if you wanted peace, you had to become them. change your name, your identity, everything. At first, most gangs resisted. Nobody wanted to give up who they were. But over time, the pressure became too much. One by one, groups started folding and joining anyway. Their recruitment style got wild. Early on, you needed somebody to vouch for you. But by 59, that didn't matter anymore. If you existed, you were a potential member. If someone said yes, they were in instantly. No ceremony, no delay, but saying no came with consequences. Beatings repeated day after day until that person gave in. Other gangs did similar things, but the vice lords took it to another level. They didn't respect boundaries. Neighborhood lines didn't matter. Anybody could get approached. Violence became part of their everyday routine. They trained, boxed, and sharpened their skills, but not just with each other. Random people on the street could become targets for no reason at all. It wasn't always about beef. Sometimes it was just about proving dominance. Eventually, their influence spread even into the Illinois Youth Center. Inside there, if you weren't a vice lord, you were seen as an enemy. That shift in power became clear when Pep ended up back there again and heard about what happened to his girlfriend, how a chaplain named Bo Chest had beaten her in front of family. Pep didn't react emotionally. He got focused. He asked one question, which arm did it? Then he made a promise. When he got out, he was coming back for that arm. Once he hit the streets, it was all business. An early attempt to hit the chaplains head on failed because of numbers, so they switched tactics. They disappeared, stayed low, moved quietly. The chaplains thought the war was over. That was the mistake. Then came one of the wildest moments. Word spread that hundreds of chaplains were gathered at the Central Park Theater. The vice lords started marching over, about 50 deep, but fear started creeping in. One by one, people dropped off. By the time they got there, only 12 remained. Those 12 didn't turn back. They walked into that theater and went straight into a fight against dozens of opponents. And somehow, they were winning. The fight spilled outside, turned chaotic. That's when Bo Chest appeared. Pep and another member grabbed him, pinned him down, and carried out that promise in the most brutal way. By the time police showed up, the damage was already done and Pep was taken in. Even with the arrest, the message had already spread. Back at the youth center, the story hit like a shockwave. The impact was immediate. The chaplains, once a major force, collapsed almost overnight. Members flipped in large numbers, joining the vice lords. After that, the chaplains were never the same. They faded into the background, just a shadow of what they used to be. And by then, it was clear. The vice lords weren't just rising anymore. They were taking over. By the time 1959 really got rolling, the vice lords weren't just another name floating around North Lawndale. They were becoming the name. Everywhere you looked, smaller crews were getting swallowed up. It wasn't even always a long war anymore. Sometimes it was just pressure, intimidation, and the understanding that fighting back was only going to end one way: flip or get crushed. That was the reality. But what made their rise different wasn't just the violence, it was the image. These dudes understood something early that a lot of others didn't. Power isn't just about what you do, it's about how you look doing it. While most guys on the block were keeping it basic, the vice lords stepped out different. Earrings shining, black capes draped over their shoulders with gold lettering. It wasn't normal back then. It was bold. It was loud. Morris Calloway played a big role in shaping that identity. He helped craft the whole visual language of the vice lords. The top hat, the cane, the gloves, it gave them a kind of organized, almost theatrical presence. Then came the logo, a skull rocking a top hat, holding a cigarette holder, smoke curling out with canes forming the letters CVL. It wasn't just style, it was branding before branding was even a thing on the streets. And those capes, they weren't just for show. Underneath all that flair, they were hiding weapons, shotguns, heat, moving around in plain sight without raising suspicion. It got so serious that police started stopping them and forcing them to take the capes off right there in public. That's when you know something has gone too far. By this point, fear was their biggest weapon. They weren't just beating rival gangs, they were erasing them. And once the vice lords cleared out enough competition, they started running things like a system. They even set a curfew, 9 p.m. If you weren't one of them and you were outside after that, you were getting dealt with. No questions asked, they owned the night. What made them even harder to deal with was how they moved. Most gangs stayed locked into one area, defending corners like it was sacred ground. The vice lords didn't care about that. They were everywhere and nowhere at the same time. One day, they'd be deep in one neighborhood. Next day, they'd pop up somewhere completely different. It kept the police guessing and kept rivals on edge. There was no safe zone. Still, even with all that movement, they had a core spot, 2135 South Millard. That was where leadership met, where decisions were made. That was the nerve center. Then, 1960 came, and Pep stepped back out at 17 years old, already carrying weight. But things had changed while he was gone. One of his own guys had switched sides and joined a crew called the Morphines. Pep tried to handle it calmly at first, tried to bring him back into the fold. That didn't work, and once that door closed, it was war. All winter, the vice lords stayed on the Morphines' neck. No breaks, no breathing room. Eventually, the pressure broke them. The Morphines folded, and even their leadership came over. Just like that, another name wiped off the board. Next up were the Cherokees. These weren't pushovers. They had control over key spots, including a major school and a strong stretch of street territory. The vice lords fought them, took some ground, but Pep wanted everything. He offered them a chance to surrender. They refused. That decision cost them. What followed was straight chaos, relentless attacks until the Cherokees couldn't hold their ground anymore. Most of them flipped, the rest scattered, joining whoever would take them, another crew gone. Then came the Imperial Knights, same story, different name, pressure, non-stop conflict until they gave in. By now, the map of the West Side was being redrawn in real time. The Braves were a different kind of challenge. They had numbers, they had territory, and they had influence, especially in the housing projects. But the vice lords went all in, 3 months of straight war, and when it was over, the Braves were done. That victory opened up even more territory and brought the vice lords closer to full control. Now it was down to one major obstacle, the Egyptian Cobras. The vice lords already had a massive stretch of land under control, but they wanted it all. They gave the Cobras an ultimatum: leave or face the consequences. What followed was brutal. During one clash, Pep stabbed one of their lieutenants, and that situation led to him getting locked up again, this time treated as an adult. While he was gone, things escalated even further. A young vice lord leader was killed, and that loss hit hard. From behind bars, Pep sent word. The Cobras needed to be weakened before he came home. The vice lords followed through. They targeted leadership, hit key members, and applied pressure from every angle. By the time Pep got out, the Cobras weren't the same force anymore, but the streets weren't the only place the vice lords were taking over. Inside jail, they were building power too. Pep made sure of that. Even surrounded by older inmates, he made it clear quickly that he wasn't someone to test. After handling a few challenges, he gained respect and control. Soon enough, the vice lords were running things inside. Better food, better positions, better living conditions, and that kind of power attracted people. Guys started joining just to get a piece of that life. When they got released, they carried that loyalty back to the streets, making the organization even bigger. Pep even pulled off something wild. He escaped by having someone who looked like him take his place. For months, guards didn't even notice. By the time they realized, it was already too late. Inside, communication was next level. Messages through pipes, vents, even using staff as messengers. The guards didn't stop it because they knew the consequences would follow them home. The vice lord's reach went beyond the walls. By 1961, when Pep came back out, he wasn't returning to chaos. He was stepping into a structured machine. Under leaders like Sugar Kane, the vice lords had evolved. They weren't just fighting anymore, they were making money. Businesses paid them for protection. Hustlers paid them to operate. They had real influence. If someone wanted to open a business, they had to check in with the vice lords first. That kind of power didn't go unnoticed. It put them on a collision course with the mafia. Eventually, that tension exploded. A shooting at their headquarters left a top member dead. The streets knew that bullet was meant for Pep. Police showed up, found weapons everywhere, and started cracking down. Instead of going after the bigger picture, they focused on the vice lords, trying to flip members and break the structure from inside. That pressure forced the vice lords to adjust. They leaned into faster money. Car thefts became a major operation. They had keys for everything, moving vehicles like it was nothing. Those cars became tools for everything else. Transport, crime, profit. Behind all of it was strategy. Leonard Calloway treated the streets like a battlefield, mapping out territories, planning moves, studying every angle. The vice lords weren't just reacting, they were thinking ahead. And sometimes they played psychological games. By the time the attack started, it was already too late for anyone to react. These weren't random acts, it was calculated. Intimidation, control, dominance. By the end of 1961, even major groups like the Imperial Chaplains had folded and joined. That moment marked something new, the creation of the first official branch, the Imperial Vice Lords. At that point, it was clear this wasn't just a gang anymore, it was an empire in the making. By 1964, everything the Vice Lords had built was starting to get too big to control. What began as a tight crew had now grown into thousands of members spread all over the West Side. At that size, there was no way one man could keep everything in check. Even someone like Pep, who had been at the center of it all, could feel things slipping out of reach. So at just 21 years old, he made a move that surprised people. He stepped back from being the face of the streets. He didn't disappear completely, though. He was still around, still influencing decisions behind the scenes, but he wasn't out front calling every shot anymore. That left a big question hanging in the air. Who was going to take over? That decision came in a real, casual setting, not some big ceremony. One night in a pool room, the leadership came together and chose Alfonso Alford. Now, Alford wasn't one of the original names people expected. He had only been around for a couple of years, joining in his late 20s. But what he lacked in history, he made up for in presence. He had that natural pull, charisma, confidence, and a temper that could switch on quick. But more than that, he actually looked out for people. He'd spend his own money taking younger members out, trying to give them experiences outside of the streets. He even helped some of them find jobs, pushing them to earn legal money. That kind of leadership hit different. Around that same time, something unexpected happened. One night in July 1964, some of the top guys were just posted up on the street, drinking, talking, watching the younger members move around. The younger ones were loud, bragging about fights and victories over crews that were already broken. It was all about being tough, being feared. But the older guys started seeing something else. They looked at the damage, not just to rival gangs, but to their own neighborhood. Buildings messed up, businesses gone, people living in struggle, and for a moment, it hit them. They were part of that destruction. That conversation turned into something bigger. They started asking themselves, what if they flipped the whole approach? That night planted the seed for a new direction. And that's when they started calling themselves the Conservative Vice Lords. At the same time, the structure of the organization had to evolve. Back in the early days, they didn't really claim specific blocks. They just moved across the West Side like a force of nature, hitting wherever they wanted. But by 1964, that changed. They locked in a real headquarters at 16th and Lawndale. That became home base for the conservatives. But by then, the Vice Lord Nation was too big to stay unified under one tight command. Different groups started forming their own identities, branching off while still carrying the Vice Lord name. Crews that used to just go by street names started becoming their own factions, each with its own leadership and style. You had groups spreading across neighborhoods, operating almost independently. Some members didn't even know who the top leaders were anymore. It wasn't one tight crew, it was a network. As the conservatives leaned into this new direction, they started trying to calm the streets instead of heating them up. They stepped in to mediate conflicts, shutting down wars before they got out of hand. One of the biggest moves was making peace with the Egyptian Cobras. That wasn't just symbolic, it opened doors for expansion into new areas. For a moment, it looked like they were becoming something completely different. Instead of being the source of chaos, they were acting like protectors, watching over businesses, keeping order, making sure people in the neighborhood weren't getting harassed. But the reality was complicated. The actual police didn't trust any of it. To them, the vice lords were still the same group they'd always been. And on the ground, a lot of younger members were still stuck in that same cycle. With no real opportunities, the streets kept pulling them back. That's when the leadership realized something deeper. If they wanted real change, they had to create opportunity. The neighborhood was struggling badly. No businesses, no investment, no jobs. Without money flowing in, nothing was getting fixed. It was a cycle of neglect. So they started thinking bigger. They wanted to build their own economy, bring in businesses, create jobs, and give young people another path. By 1965, they started connecting with people in positions of power, like Commander George Sims. He was the first black commander in that district, and they saw him as someone who might actually listen. But then 1967 hit, and everything got tested. That winter was brutal. Snowstorms shut the whole city down. Streets were blocked, police couldn't move, and for a lot of young guys, it felt like there were no rules anymore. The younger vice lords went wild, looting stores and causing chaos. Even some older members got caught up in it. All the progress they had been building took a hit. Businesses got scared and started leaving, making the situation even worse. But out of that chaos came another opportunity. A man named David Dawley stepped in, working with the conservatives to create something bigger, Operation Bootstrap. This brought together rival groups like the Vice Lords, Cobras, and Roman Saints, along with major corporations. That summer, instead of riots, these groups kept the peace. They stopped fights, protected businesses, and held things together. It showed what was possible when things were organized differently. That momentum led to something even bigger. In 1967, they formed CVL Inc., a legitimate nonprofit. They opened a spot called Teen Town at 16th and Lawndale, a place meant to give young people something positive. But the timing couldn't have been worse. The same day Teen Town opened, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. The city exploded into riots, and the moment got overshadowed completely. This time, the Vice Lords didn't step in to stop it. They stayed focused on protecting their own spaces. When the dust settled, many businesses were gone for good. Still, they kept pushing forward. They opened relief centers, handed out food, tried to rebuild. They even reached out to the city for help, but got ignored. By 1969, they even managed to form a rare alliance with major rivals, putting aside differences to stand together against bigger issues. But the city wasn't feeling it. Even with violence dropping, leadership launched a full crackdown. The Vice Lords weren't seen as a community force. They were still labeled a gang no matter what they tried to build. That was the reality. No matter how much they shifted, their past followed them. Over time, the original leaders faded out and a new generation took over. By the 1990s, they tried another transformation, introducing a new set of beliefs tied to Islam, reshaping their identity again. But even with all the changes, the core never fully left. Today, the Vice Lords have grown far beyond Chicago, spreading across the country with tens of thousands of members. And while pieces of that old vision still exist, so does the other side. The same cycle of crime, power, and survival that started it all